Hi everybody, happy Wednesday. I'm Reverend Carissa Surber, the pastor here at Hunt's Church, and I just finished a morning of field day with the Hunt's Church preschool. We had lots of Hidden Figures, the parent volunteer group from Hunt's Church preschool here this morning, and all the kids were playing with the obstacle course and bubbles and chalk and field day temporary tattoos and the whole 9 yards. So look out for some pictures about that. Today I want to tell you about a hidden figure in the Bible that we don't talk about much, and that's Deborah and her cohort Jael. And so today I'm just going to read to you the story of Deborah and Jael, because these are women who really took action in a time when all of God's people were living in really a state of chaos. The 12 tribes had really kind of dissolved, and the king had not yet come to power, and so we were in the time of the judges. Deborah was a judge in this time, and so that meant that people came to her both for prophecy. They came to her because they knew she could tell them what God wanted, and they also came to her for strategy and leadership and military advice. So you can't make this stuff up. I can't tell the story better than the Bible, so I'm just going to read to you today the story of Deborah and Jael. Now the people of Israel kept right on doing evil in God's sight. With Ehud dead, God sold them off to the Jabin king of Canaan, who ruled from Hazar. Sisera, remember that name, Sisera. Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim, was the commander of his army. Now the people of Israel cried out to God because Sisera had cruelly oppressed them with his 900 iron chariots for 20 years. Now Deborah was a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth. Deborah was a judge over Israel at the time, and she held court under Deborah's palm between Ramah and Bethel in the hills of Ephraim. The people of Israel went to her in issues in a matter of justice. So she sent for Barak, the son of Abinoam from Kadesh and Naphtali, and said to Barak, "It has become clear that God, the God of Israel, commands you to go to Mount Tabor and prepare for battle. Take 10 companies of soldiers from Naphtali and Zebulun. I'll take care of getting Sisera, the leader of Jabin's army, to the Kishon River with all his chariots and troops, and I'll make sure that you win the battle." That's what God has said. And Barak said, "Well, if you go with me, Deborah, I'll go. But I won't go if you won't go with me." And Deborah said, "Of course I'll go with you. But understand that with an attitude like that, there'll be no glory in it for you. God will use a woman's hand to take care of Sisera." So Deborah got ready, and she went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to go with Kadesh, and 10 companies of men followed him, and Deborah was with him. And so it happened that Heber the Kenite had parted company with the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab and Moses' law. Heber was now living in Zananim near Kadesh. And they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. And so Sisera immediately called up his chariots to the Kishon River, 900 chariots, along with all his troops who were with her at Harosheth Hagoyim. So Deborah said to Barak, "Charge! This very day God has given you victory over Sisera. Isn't God marching before you?" So Barak charged down the slopes of Mount Tabor, his 10 companies following him. God rerouted Sisera, all those chariots, all those troops before Barak. Sisera jumped out of his chariot and ran away, and Barak chased the chariots and the troops all the way to Harosheth Hagoyim. Sisera's entire fighting force was killed, not one man left. But meanwhile, Sisera, running for his life, headed for the tent of Jael. Jael was the wife of Heber the Kenite. Jabin, king of Hazar, and Heber the Kenite were on good terms with one another. So Jael stepped up to Sisera and said, "Come on in, sir. Stay here with me. Don't be afraid." So he went in with her to her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. And he said to her, "Please, a little water. I'm thirsty." So she gave him a drink and then covered him up again so he could hide. He then said, "Stand at the tent flap. If anyone comes by and asks you, 'Is there anyone here?' tell them, 'No, not a soul.'" But while he was fast asleep from exhaustion, Jael took a tent peg and a hammer and tiptoed toward him and drove the tent peg through his temple all the way into the ground. And Sisera died. Now Barak arrived in pursuit of Sisera, and so Jael went out to greet him. She said, "Come, I'll show you the man you're looking for." And he went with her, and there he was. Sisera, stretched out dead with a tent peg through his temple. And so on that day, God subdued the evil Jabin, king of Canaan, before the people of Israel. The people of Israel pressed harder and harder on Jabin, king of Canaan, until there was nothing left of him. Here ends the reading. I told you can't make this stuff up. The story of Deborah and Jael is one that would be so strange to hear in church on Sunday morning because it sounds more like a weird pitch for a Lord of the Rings movie than anything else. A woman sitting under a tree giving military strategy to a general who's afraid, and then another woman who's supposed to be on the side of the evil king is the one who turns around and literally kills a man by driving a tent peg through his skull into the ground. This is bananas. But the story of Deborah and Jael shows us that God brings courage and wisdom, good counsel, and the courage to face what is evil and fight against what is evil. God brings that courage and that wisdom and that insight to people in surprising times and surprising places. Don't count them out. So this week, when you hear surprisingly good wisdom from a surprising source, or when you have the courage in a moment to do something about a situation, do it. Take that action, take that leap of faith. Know that even in chaotic and crazy times, like the times of the judges or the times we live in today, God is with you. God is bringing that wisdom and that insight and that courage to take the next faithful step. We'll see you this Sunday for the story of Ruth, and Ruth is a story that is one of the most beautiful stories that comes also out of this time period of the Judges when there is chaos throughout all of Israel. Hope you'll join us for worship this Sunday, 8:30 a.m. contemporary service and 10 a.m. traditional worship as we continue to celebrate hidden figures, women of valor like Ruth, who changed the world.